A to Z Mysteries, Super Edition 3, White House Whiteout by Ron Roy. Chapter 9. They ate in the kitchen. "This table looks like a pack of wolves had a picnic here," Molly Makepeace said. The 7 kids had devoured all the soup, a plateful of sandwiches, and a whole pie. Natasha lay under the table, waiting for something to fall her way. "We saw wolves at the National Zoo," Dink said. "The puppies look just like dog puppies." "We don't have any wolves here in Virginia anymore," Lauren said. "Really? I was sure I heard wolves when we were stuck in that van," Josh said. "You probably heard coyotes," Dink said. "My dad told me he sees coyotes around here all the time." "Where is your dad?" Dink asked. He remembered the 4 stockings hanging above the fireplace. "In the army," Lauren said. "But he'll be home in time for Christmas." "Yikes, what time is it?" Tinker said. He jumped up. "Come on, Lauren, let's turn on our snowmobile lights. The president is coming." Everyone put on hats, coats, and boots. Molly found a leash for Natasha. "We don't want her running off again," she said. While Tinker and Lauren started their snowmobiles, Molly found a few flashlights. Then she led the 5 kids out to a large flat area behind the house. "In the summer, this is a pick-your-own-strawberry field," she said. "The kids run the business and save the profits for college." Tinker and Lauren came roaring around the corner on their snowmobiles. They made a giant circle in the snow, then pulled up and parked next to their mother and the 5 kids. "Let's spread out around the circle," Dink said. He still had the flashlight he'd taken from the van. Molly handed out the other flashlights, and they 8 took a position. 8 faces were turned toward the sky. The snowmobile lights threw their shadows into the circle. Suddenly, Natasha let out a bark. She pointed her muzzle up and began to whimper. A moment later, they all heard what Natasha had heard. "It's the helicopter," Dink said. "Turn on the flashlights." A dark object flew in front of the moon. Tiny lights blinked on and off as the object flew lower in the sky. "They see us," Josh cried. Everyone began waving their flashlights as the chopper came closer. Dink's hat almost blew off his head from the wind made by the blades. Natasha began to howl. She tugged on her leash as the helicopter landed in the middle of the circle. "She knows who it is," Casey said. They all stared at the black helicopter. Then a side door opened, and the President of the United States stepped out. "Oh my gosh," said Tinker. "It really is him." Casey and Natasha ran toward the President. After all the hugging was over, Casey led her stepfather over to introduce him to her new friends. Everyone shook hands with President Zachary Thornton. He looked at Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose. "I understand you stayed with Casey and Marshall through the entire ordeal," he said. "Thank you very much. I owe you." Dink blushed down to his toes. "Natasha was the real hero," he said. "She went to get help and led Tinker and Lauren right to us." "Did you fly that yourself, sir?" Tinker asked the President. "No, I brought my pilot," the President said. "Jeff and I have been out looking since we found the note." "What note?" Casey asked. "Your mom found it on one of the Christmas wreaths," the President told her. "It was a ransom note for Natasha. A little while later, we realized you and Marshall were gone too." "Would you and your pilot like to come inside?" Molly asked. "The kids ate every scrap of food, but I could make coffee." "That would be wonderful," the President said. 20 minutes later, everyone was crowded into the living room. The 5 kids were telling everyone how they burned the spare tire on the bonfire when there was a knock on the door. "More company," Molly said. "It's way after midnight." "I think I know who it is," the president said. "I sent a couple of FBI boys to collect the bad guys." Molly opened the door. 2 big men in dark uniforms stood on the porch. Between them were Joe Payne and Ace Boyd. The pair was handcuffed together. The president looked at Casey. "Are these the people who took you?" he asked. "She is," Casey said. "I never got a good look at him, though." "I did," Dink said. He pulled the cigarette from his pocket. "I was hiding 10 feet away and I saw his face. He was smoking this." "Thank you," the president said. He took the cigarette butt and slipped it into a pocket. "Agents Dirk and Lynch, take these 2 back to the city and lock them up. Have FBI Director Smiley call me tomorrow." "Yes, sir." The FBI agents and their prisoners left. "We have to leave too," the president said. "Molly, Tinker, and Lauren, thank you for what you did. If there's anything I can ever do, please call me." "The White House?" Tinker asked. "Like, just call you?" The president smiled. "Yes, Tinker," he said. "Like, just call me." The kids all hugged Molly and Tinker and Lauren. Then Jeff the pilot helped the 5 kids and Natasha climb into the helicopter. When everyone was strapped in, he took the chopper up out of the Makepeace's strawberry field. 15 minutes later, Dink poked Josh and Ruth Rose. "Look," he said. He pointed down. They were flying over the White House. Surrounded by snow and with all the lights on, the White House looked magical. Jeff landed the helicopter on the president's special landing pad. Everyone thanked Jeff. Then they all followed the president to his private residence. Dink was surprised to see his father sitting on the sofa in the president's living room. "Dad," Dink said, "how'd you get here?" "President Thornton was kind enough to send a car for me," Dink's father said. "Louise and Mr. and Mrs. Lee and I have had a nice chat about how our kids managed to get in trouble." "Dad, it wasn't our fault," Dink said. "That crazy lady drove away while we were trying to rescue Natasha." His father smiled. "I know that, son," he said. Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose were all introduced to Casey's mom and Marshall's parents. When everyone had found seats, Casey's mom said, "What I don't understand is how this Joe Payne knew that Natasha was the president's dog." "Mom, Natasha's sweater says first dog on it," Casey said. "You should know. You knitted it for her." Everyone had a good laugh. "So I guess Joe Payne figured she could steal the dog and get some ransom money," Dink said. "And the rest of us were just along for the ride," Josh said, rubbing his sword arm. Casey yawned. "The first stepdaughter is tired," she said. The president stood up. "I think we all need to get to bed," he said. "I can't wait to get back to the hotel," Josh said. "Actually, you and Dinkin Marshall will be sharing Lincoln's bedroom tonight," the president said. He winked at Dink's father. "We're sleeping here tonight?" Josh yelped. "In the White House?" "Yes, everyone is having a sleepover," Casey's mom said. "Ruth Rose, you can share Casey's room." "I brought our luggage," Dink's father told Dink, Josh, and Ruth Rose. "Your pajamas and things are already in your rooms." "Mr. Lee and I will head home," Marshall's mother said. "I have to be up early for work." She kissed Marshall. "Get some sleep, and no staying up all night talking." The kids all shared a high five. Later, just as Dink was falling asleep, Josh poked him. "What?" Dink asked. "I heard something funny," Josh said. "Josh, it's almost 2 in the morning," Dink said. "I don't want to hear any of your lame jokes." "I heard something weird," Josh insisted. a voice out in the hall. Marshall was sleeping on the sofa. "What's going on?" he asked, sitting up. "Josh is hearing things," Dink said. "I'm not hearing things," Josh said. "Someone is out there." "And I know who it is," Marshall whispered. "It's Casey pulling her Lincoln's ghost joke again." "I'll bet Ruth Rose put her up to it," Josh said. Marshall slipped off the sofa and wrapped his sheet around himself. "Get your sheets and follow me," he whispered to Dink and Josh. Marshall led the two boys to a small door behind the sofa. "Where does this go?" Dink asked. "You'll see." They entered a bathroom. Marshall pointed to a tall cupboard near the bathtub. "It leads to a secret passageway." He opened the cupboard, revealing a hallway. At the end was another door. "That goes to the main hall," he whispered. "Don't let the girls see us." Marshall opened the door as quietly as he could. He stuck his head out, then motioned to Dink and Josh. The boys saw two figures covered in sheets. They were crouched outside the door to the Lincoln bedroom. Dink saw Ruth Rose's red sneakers sticking out from under one of the sheets. "Let's get him," Marshall whispered. "Cover up." The three boys draped the sheets over their heads, leaving room to see where they were walking. They crept up behind the girls, waving their arms like flying ghosts. "Good evening," Josh said in his deepest, spookiest voice. The two crouching fingers jumped up. Ruth Rose screamed. Casey shoved open the door to the Lincoln bedroom, and they both ran in. Dink, Josh, and Marshall went right in behind them, still waving their arms in the air and making ghost noises. "I know it's you, Marshall Lee," Casey said, whipping off her sheet. "And I recognized your voice, Joshua," Ruth Rose said. She yanked off her sheet. "Gotcha," Josh said. They all started to laugh. Dink heard knocking behind him and turned around. A tall man wearing a black suit stood in the doorway. He had a black beard and a tall black hat on his head. The five kids froze as if turned to ice. Dink gulped. He could hardly swallow. He was staring at the ghost of Abraham Lincoln. "I hope you enjoy sleeping in my room," the figure of Abe Lincoln said. "Don't forget to make the bed tomorrow. Good night." The man closed the door and walked away. As the man walked down the hall, he heard screaming from the room behind him. Smiling, he pulled off the fake beard and top hat. "Boy, I love doing that," President Zachary Thornton said to himself.